Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, we'll look at a new survey that asks rural educators in Arizona what they need to better teach science and math. We'll hear from the editor of a book that chronicles the oral history of the Yavapai Nation, and we'll take a look at the work of local urban landscape artist Laura Spalding Best. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The State Senate today approved a new budget that includes expanding Arizona's Medicaid program. The Senate vote occurred after the House worked until close to 4 a.m. before finally approving the plan. With today's votes, the budget was sent to the governor, and the special session of the legislature dealing with Medicaid and the budget was adjourned. But the regular session continues, at least for now. We'll talk much more about the legislature's, the overnighter on tomorrow's Journalists Roundtable. Well, the State Department of Education recently surveyed more than 3,000 rural superintendents, principals, and teachers on what they need for better results in the classroom. Science Foundation Arizona Chief Operating Officer Margaret Mullen is here to discuss the results of the survey. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Surveying teachers, principals, why?
We had a donor say, you've invested $40 million in the education in the major communities in Arizona. How do you know what the rural communities need? So we went to the Department of Education and asked if they would send this survey out for Science Foundation Arizona. And we got an amazing 31% response rate. We sent it to every public school superintendent, principal, and teacher in the 13 rural counties. And I must say the results are devastating.
I want to get to the results in a second here, but I was going to ask you what constitutes a rural school in a rural school district.
Well, in Arizona, everything outside of Maricopa and Pima County are considered rural by state definition. So we surveyed all 13 of those rural counties. There are obviously communities like Flagstaff, Prescott, Yuma, that we would consider urban, and we've made significant investments in those communities, and we will continue to do so. But this will force us to look at what we can do to help those smaller communities in Arizona.
Okay, what was asked in this survey? What was found?
We asked teachers how much professional development they had, were they qualified to teach science and math if they were teaching science and math. We asked if they had the necessary tools to do their job, and we asked what they needed to improve science and math teaching and academic achievement in Arizona. Unfortunately, in rural Arizona, very few teachers get adequate professional development, and in fact, very little in math and science. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, most of them don't have the tools necessary to do their job. You would think that they would beg for salary increases in smaller class sizes. That is not the case. What these people are saying is, we have to spend our own money to have the basic resources in our classroom. We need equipment. Some of these stories are heartbreaking. They have textbooks that are 12 years old that don't have all the pages in them. They don't have basic supplies. They spend an average of $1,000 a year, science and math teachers, for the supplies for their own classrooms, and yet they make less than $30,000 a year.
This sounds like basic stuff here. Where is the state? Shouldn't the state be overseeing this? Where's accountability? Where's oversight? I mean, that sounds unacceptable.
It is unacceptable to most people. The state will tell you that they invest per pupil, and there is an additional amount of funding that goes to rural Arizona, but it goes to rural Arizona because of things like the transportation needs. People spend a whole lot more time on a school bus. The school buses don't last as long. Bottom line, the money does not get to the teachers in the class. And if we want an educated population to continue to develop Arizona and have the tax base we have, we can't throw away 22% of the student population, and that's what lives in rural Arizona.
We will get critics who say that we can't throw money at education, that we've spent enough. Some say, I realize what the state rankings are, but there are some who think that that's still too much and that you're spending it on the wrong things. How do you respond to that?
I'm not asking the state to put money in this. I don't trust the state to get this money to the teachers and actually into the classroom. What I'd like the state to do is look at all the expenditures, determine how much of it is actually getting to the classroom to improve academic achievement. What we're going to do is take philanthropic dollars and ask the public to help us in addition to what we're getting from philanthropic donors. And we're going to get gift cards to teachers. We're going to get professional development to teachers. We're going to get basic science and math equipment to teachers.
This is through Science Foundation Arizona?
Through Science Foundation Arizona.
How much money are we talking about?
We've already raised $15 million. That sounds like a lot of money. That's less than $100 per rural school. So we hope to raise another $15 million, but at least we will begin to make a difference in the classroom.
Do we know how? Do you know how the money will be distributed? First, let's start with that.
Yes, we are going to start with Navajo and Apache counties. We are hiring a field staff person for Science Foundation to work with the schools. They will tell us what equipment they need. We will dedicate up to $10,000 per school, but the teachers have to get the principal and the superintendent to agree to do their part. That's not financial. That's let them have common planning time so they can have the professional development and the planning across the curriculum.
Are there RFPs involved here? I mean, how do you get this money out? How do you know where it's going to go?
Oh, we're tough. We will issue an RFP. We will require the superintendent and the principal to sign that they will do the things they need to do, and we will give gift cards to the teachers for supplies. They will give us the receipts. We will track everything. We will track the previous 3 years of academic performance and the next 3 years to make sure that what we're doing actually improves academic achievement.
Are you working in conjunction at all with the state? This sounds like something the State Department of Education should be doing.
The State Department of Education helped us do this. They're very aware of what we're doing. They have no surplus funds to get to the classroom. They understand the problems, but they don't have the resources to do it. And this is a short-term stopgap measure to give teachers hope and hopefully to get some student achievement increased in rural Arizona.
How do you address the concerns, everything from after-school programs to just basic needs from teachers, with Common Core now coming in? The standards of the state are changing big time. How does this play into all?
And we're not going to be able to implement Common Core unless we can get basic supplies and equipment to these teachers. If you read some of the teacher comments, and I would advise anybody to go on our website and do this. These are not my answers. These are comments from teachers in Arizona saying, we haven't had textbook changes in 12 years and we don't have all the pages in our textbooks. We don't have calculators in our classroom. So we're looking at how do we get the basic needs so they can begin to implement Common Core. Teachers have to have increased rigor in the classroom. Common Core is important. And the only way they can do it is with the supplies and equipment necessary to do their jobs.
So Science Foundation, $15 million over 3 years. And you're looking for what? Corporations, individuals, foundations, all of the above?
All of that. And we've already heard, for example, Salt River Project, the minute they saw this, called and said, we've got a plant in Apache County. We're on board. We'll help. So I think there will be a lot of corporate support in Arizona and philanthropic support, but we are also getting a lot of support from around the country.
Give us the website.
www.sfaz for ScienceFoundationArizona.org.
sfaz.org.
Yes.
All right. Margaret, good luck. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to see you.
We want to hear from you. Submit your questions, comments, and concerns via email at arizonahorizon@asu.edu.
In the 1970s, the Yavapai community of the Fort McDowell Reservation east of the Phoenix area fought off a proposed federal dam which spurred tribal elders to have their histories recorded as they themselves knew it, passed down orally from generation to generation. The effort resulted in Oral History of the Yavapai, a book that chronicles the history of the Yavapai Nation. And joining us now to talk about the book and what it took to put it together is Carolina Butler. She served as editor of the project. Good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why did you undertake this particular project?
Because it was not mine to do, but it just worked out that way. The oldest man of the tribe, Mike Harrison, he asked me in 1973, I want you to write the history of our tribe. And I said, well, I'm busy right now helping you fight off the Orm Dam, which would have forced them from their land. And but I said, but I'll get you someone. And so I sent out a letter to a publisher in Tucson that I knew, and the letter found itself to the hands of Dr. Sigrid Kara, an ASU anthropology professor. And so she called me up and she said, I'm interested in doing this project. And I took her out to Fort McDowell and introduced her to Mike Harrison, and he had invited his cousin, John Williams. So the three of them sat down and they started recording, and they recorded for about 2 to 3 years. It ended up in 200 audio recordings of their interviews. And Mike and John died of old age and infirmities in 1983. And Dr. Kara, unfortunately, got cancer, and she died in 1984. She knew that she was not going to get well, so she wrote her will and left me all her research material.
Wow.
So the thing, yes. So this big project landed in my lap, and so I just, put it aside for many, many years. Did some work on it, categorizing her color slides, etc. And anyway, one day I said, I'm not getting any younger, I better get this thing done.
And you got this thing done. And
I'm very pleased.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
The Oral History of the Yavapai is a very special and different book which all Arizonans should know about, because it's history from the Indians' point of view and told in their own words. And you don't come across that in any book. Nobody's library shelf has a book like this one.
And you talked, again, to the two elders. They were mostly responsible for the earlier interviews.
Yes.
Were other people involved, and we're looking at them right now, were other people involved at later dates, or was this mostly their remembrances?
It was their remembrances, but you will read in the book that Dr. Kara writes that other people from the reservation came around and says, well, that's not exactly how it happened, But anyway, this is to be expected. And so she said, after hearing from other people, there was no question that the ones that had the most knowledge about the old days was Mike and John. And
you mentioned some other people involved, and maybe they had different stories. How do you, when you put an oral history together, how do you make sure that the facts are the facts? How do you corroborate some of this information? Do you have to look in textbooks? Do you talk to other people? How'd you make sure that what you were getting was the real thing?
Well, I remember that Dr. Kara, because all of us became close friends, and I remember Dr. Kara because she would research the Army records, the white people's records, and she would say, it's amazing how what the two old fellows are saying just dovetails in with the records that the Army had put.
There you go.
So
and
it's
your
really
book,
amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Your book includes some amazing photography. Talk to us about where you got these photos, and Yavapai, the land here, it's absolutely gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. But the photographs, where'd you find this?
The photographs, first of all, the cover is of Four Peaks.
Yes.
And Four Peaks is on everybody's Arizona license plate,
That's right. And we can almost all see it, too, at some time during the year.
So, but anyway, this photo was taken by my son, who's a professional photographer. He gets his photographs in Arizona highways, Elias Butler. But anyway, he has taken so many photos, and when I finished the text of the book, he said, Mom, you can have any photo that you want from my inventory. And so I just went through and I asked him, do you have a photo of this, this? I said, I don't want any buildings, I don't want any people, I want landscape.
And you got some landscape. We just saw just an
Yes.
amazing array of photographs there. When the project was finally done, you got the book, you're holding it in your hands, you leaf through the book, you look, you read. Was it what you expected?
I have to tell you that it brings me to tears because the story of the Yavapai is so painful, and no one knows about it. And these people walk among us today, and I say that for 150 years, the Yavapai people have been walking among us, holding this painful past in their hearts and souls, because their history has not been out until now. And so imagine the Black Americans walking among us today, and let's say that no history has ever been recorded of their painful past. It's the same way for the Yavapai. So
what reaction have you had from the Yavapai people, and what reaction have you had from other historians?
well, the historians, I'll tell you, even today when I was telling everybody, I alerted half of Arizona that I was going to be...
Good news.
Yes, that the book was going to be on this program. The professionals, anthropologists, archaeologists, professors that I know, and that know about the book, they said, oh, it's so great. One professor emailed me today, and he says, I've read the book, and he says, I had to skip some of the painful parts. It was just too much. And I says, well, these people have been walking around with it in their hearts for 150 years. And so,
well,
anyway.
We've run out of time. Congratulations on the project. Obviously a long time in coming, but you got it out there. The book is out there. Continued success. Thank you for joining us.
And the Yavapais have all loved it. And I think every Yavapai is watching today.
Well, good. And that's good news, too. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ted.
Tonight's Arizona Art Beat looks at the work of urban landscape artist Laura Spalding Best, who paints street scenes in ways designed to emphasize unappreciated flaws in our everyday view. We welcome Laura Spalding Best, and we should note that her paintings are on display at the Burton Barr Library in Phoenix through August 8th. Good to have you here. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Urban landscapes. Why?
I started painting the urban landscape of Phoenix almost 10 years ago because I realized some of the landscapes I've been painting were from further away and kind of idealized and not really representing what I saw every day.
Define an urban landscape.
They're just part of our everyday view, so it's anything from buildings in downtown Phoenix to the signs on the freeways and telephone poles and utility poles.
Can you compare to traditional landscapes? I guess compositionally you can, but in other ways can you compare?
Well, yeah, one of the biggest things that we share in composition, especially with traditional Western landscapes, is the big sky and the horizon of the West, and that's still something that I try to capture about the desert environment, but I leave everything in that surrounds us.
And the title of your show is called Interconnections. Why? Why that title?
Interconnections is the physical linking of two different networks, so in the telecommunications system or the electrical grid, and that's where that came from, and of course it kind of mirrors some of the things that I try to explore in my work, which is our connection to each other as a community through our visual experience every day, and then literally through the connections of telephone lines and utility poles, how we're all actually connected.
So with that all being said, let's take a look at some of your artwork here, and I want you to explain, when you see a telephone pole, when you see some of these things, these power poles here, do you see them and go, well, that would make kind of a nice pinwheel, or do you, how does that work? How does the creative process work there?
For me, that creative process was a long time coming, from starting with just sort of these simple urban landscapes that were just a reflection of what I was seeing, and they've built to this point, which is a little bit more conceptual. So in this, these radial compositions, I'm showing all the telephone poles on one street in a way that you would never see them all together.
Yes.
So some of those, one example of one is all the utility poles of Farmer Avenue. And there's 18 of them in that formation, and they're all very different and unique in their own way. And
But again, so do you think this through at first, or do you somewhere in your mind you're saying, I'm seeing something in the circle here?
yeah, I think it through first.
You think it through first?
Yeah, it comes from, you know, a lot of tradition of pattern in art and mandalas and things like that.
Exactly. So when you're done and you step back, does it ever surprise you?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Does it?
Yeah, that's the really rewarding part of being up close painting something, taking a few steps back.
And so you mentioned Farmer Avenue in Tempe. Okay, so when you're driving around, riding your bike around, whatever the case may be, and you see a power pole, and it's got lines coming here, and it's got lines coming there, and most of us would look at it and say, that transformer looks terrible. Do you say,
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yeah, I'm inspired every day by things that are part of my morning commute and that I see driving through my neighborhood.
I mean, we see these things, and we don't concentrate on these things. When you concentrate on something like this is an everyday view here that we're looking at. When you concentrate, what are you looking for? Is there something that's not being seen that should be seen?
Yeah, I think that there are all these hidden dynamic views in our landscape, and once you start looking for them, you just see them more and more.
What got you started in art?
I've been an artist since I can remember, since I was really young, but I pursued my BFA in painting at ASU, and I graduated in 2003.
And again, what we're looking at, these are paintings, aren't they? These aren't photographs.
Oh, yes, they're all oil paintings, and I work on, I paint on metal.
Yeah, why those particular materials?
I just love painting on metal. I started out by painting on some metal found objects, and the metal is such a natural surface for oils, and especially on aluminum, it's very archival, and the way that the paint applies to that surface is wonderful. And over time, I've used the metal surface as part of the background or to represent the sky, and I've left that exposed rather than always painted over.
Interesting. Again, back to your back. When did you decide, was there a point when you said, this is, I'm assuming you painted at one point flowers or something. Everyone kind of paints something to start with.
I painted people to start with.
Okay, there
Sure.
you go. When did people become landscape art? Was there something like an aha moment? Or?
It was after I finished school and I went on a trip where I did a lot of more traditional landscape painting just because I was out further in nature. And when I came back, I really wanted to keep doing that and describe space and place. And so that's where all this came from.
Will you go back to doing landscape nature, or is this kind of got you now?
I think I'll always go to what's around me, but I might always jump back to people.
And you're Phoenix-based, correct?
Yes.
Why? Why do you stay in Phoenix?
I came out here for school, and I just love it. And I've never felt the need to leave. I've lived here for 14 years. Interesting.
Talk about the local arts community now. How supportive is it, or is it best that it's kind of out there, artists are kind of out there on their own? How does that work? Talk about the dynamic.
It can sometimes feel like artists are out there on their own, but I was part of 515 Arts Collective for 3 years, and I work at the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art, so I really get to see a lot of people putting effort into the arts in the community. In 14 years, has that effort changed? Have you seen things ebb and flow? What are you seeing? Yeah, I've seen us get a lot closer to a more active and dynamic art scene over that time, from fledgling First Fridays in the early 2000s to how it is now. And Art Detour and those kinds of things. Yeah. So optimistic about the future of art in the Valley, and the future of artists, I should say, in the Valley? Yeah, from my personal experience, it's only gotten better. And what's next for you? What's next for me? More exhibitions and more paintings.
I guess you can't run out of urban landscape, can you?
You really can't.
Well,
we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, congratulations on your work, and thank you for sharing it with us. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And Friday on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalists Roundtable. We will have more on the recently adjourned special session of the legislature that resulted in a new budget, replete with expansion of the state's Medicaid program. That's Friday on the Journalists Roundtable, and since the legislature will likely convene either tomorrow or early next week, I'm guessing it'll be probably tomorrow, even maybe perhaps tonight, we will have a full legislative wrap-up on the legislative session early next week. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.